The Galactic Military Academy of the Confederated Systems stood as a gleaming testament to order, discipline, and the enduring belief that absolutely nothing solves problems quite like superior firepower. Perched on the edge of the Cygnus arm, its architecture was designed to simultaneously inspire awe and suppress individualism, a contradiction the architects had somehow made work through liberal use of uncomfortably straight lines and of motivational holograms that followed you to the bathroom. Commander Vrexel Zorn had survived 3 galactic conflicts, 14 planetary skirmishes, and 1 particularly vicious cafeteria riot over the last shipment of Venusian pudding. His leathery green skin bore the scars of his service, each one meticulously catalogued in his personal memoir, I Told You to Duck, A Commander's Journey. With 4 beady eyes and a permanent scowl that suggested perpetual indigestion, Zorn was the perfect embodiment of military leadership feared, respected, and avoided during holiday gatherings. Listen up, you gelatinous excuses for future defenders of the Confederation, Zorn bellowed at his newest class of cadets. His voice had the charming quality of gravel being pulverized by a tank tread. You may think you're special because your parental units successfully managed reproduction. You are not. You are raw material, and I am the extremely dissatisfied sculptor. The classroom held the most diverse collection of beings this side of a spaceport customs line. There was Trill, a Mercurian whose body temperature ran so hot that she had her own specially designed seat with built-in coolant. Next to her sat Gronk, a Tau Ceti native whose 6 arms made him the undisputed champion of the Academy's annual juggling competition. In the back, Pixnar the Betelgeuse was trying not to fall asleep. His translucent skin revealing his 3 hearts beating at different tempos, a medical condition that made him excellent at complex rhythmic weaponry. Each of your species brings something unique to the Confederation's military doctrine, Zorn continued, pacing with mechanical precision. The Mercurians with their heat-resistant battle techniques, the Tau Cetians with their multi-limbed combat advantages, the Betelgeusians with their Pixnar, wake up before I use your translucent hide as a projection screen. Pixnar snapped to attention, all 3 hearts suddenly beating in terrified unison. The Galactic Confederation had emerged from the ashes of the Great Nebula Wars 3 centuries earlier, when the various spacefaring civilizations realized that constantly trying to exterminate each other was putting a serious damper on interstellar trade profits. The solution had been simple: unite under one government, maintain an obscenely powerful military, and point all those lovely weapons at anyone who wasn't part of the club. The Confederation maintains peace through superior firepower, Zorn recited, a phrase so ingrained in cadets that many mumbled it in their sleep. Our 37 member species have achieved harmony, not because we all love each other, trust me, we don't, but because we've agreed on who the bigger threats are. Your job is to become the instrument of that philosophy. Any questions? A tentative pseudopod rose from the front row. It belonged to Morp, an amorphous entity from Epsilon Eridani. Sir, my fluid dynamics professor suggested that cultural understanding might be as important as weapons training in maintaining galactic peace. Zorn's expression shifted to what might generously be called a smile, if smiles were typically associated with imminent danger. Your professor is welcome to test that theory the next time the Krovalix horde decides that our outposts would look better as smoking craters. Now, who's ready to learn how to properly disintegrate an enemy fleet? The classroom erupted in enthusiastic cheers, tentacles, appendages, and pseudopods raised in excitement. All except for Morp, who quietly oozed back into their seat, wondering if transferring to Galactic Diplomatic Corps was still an option. Senior researcher Drex had the unfortunate combination of groundbreaking intelligence and the social skills of an antisocial asteroid. His species evolved from something resembling Earth's octopuses if they'd been designed by a committee with conflicting priorities, gave him exceptional cognitive abilities and absolutely no filter between brain and speech organs. Commander Zorn. Drex burbled, tentacles twitching with barely contained excitement as he cornered the commander in the hallway. You must see what our long-range sensors have discovered. It's absolutely fascinating, unlike your daily routine which statistical analysis suggests is mind-numbingly repetitive. Zorn sighed with the weariness of someone who'd heard too many fascinating discoveries that turned out to be cosmic gas clouds that slightly resembled celebrity faces. What is it this time, Drex? Another space anomaly that turns out to be sensor dust. No, much better. We found a previously uncatalogued sentient species in the backwater spiral arm. They call their planet Earth, which shows a remarkable lack of imagination considering it mainly consists of water. The research lab was a chaotic explosion of screens, holographic projections, and half-eaten food from 17 different planets. Drex's tentacles danced across interfaces as he pulled up the data. These humans are quite peculiar. They've achieved rudimentary spaceflight, but haven't expanded beyond their own lunar satellite. And get this. Drex's skin rippled with amusement. Changing from green to a mottled purple, they still use chemical propellants for their weapons. Actual explosions and projectiles, it's adorably primitive. Zorn studied the data with growing interest. The footage showed humans engaged in various conflicts, and from ancient warriors with pointed metal sticks to slightly less ancient warriors with tubes that expelled smaller pointed metal bits at high velocity. How recent is this information? Zorn demanded. Our quantum relay just picked it up. Their broadcast signals take a while to reach us, so this might be a few of their planetary rotations old. They measure time in such tiny increments. Very inefficient. Zorn's 4 eyes narrowed simultaneously, a feat that had taken years to perfect. These humans, they spend a lot of time fighting each other, don't they? Oh yes, Drex confirmed cheerfully, pulling up more footage. They seem to have an exceptional talent for finding reasons to engage in conflict. Their religion, resources, territory, economic systems, pronunciation differences, proper order of applying condiments to food items, all valid reasons for warfare in their culture. A quite impressive diversity of causation. A slow smile spread across Zorn's face, making several junior researchers edge nervously toward the exit. When Commander Zorn smiled, it typically preceded someone having a very bad day. Drex, you beautiful tentacled genius. This is exactly what I need for my Know Your Enemy training module. Zorn clapped a heavy hand on what he assumed was Drex's shoulder, but might have been an auxiliary brain node. These humans are perfect examples of primitive warfare techniques. My cadets need to understand the evolutionary stages of combat before they can appreciate our superior methods. But Commander, one brave junior researcher ventured, isn't the module supposed to cover actual threats? Zorn's smile didn't falter, which somehow made it more terrifying. Every species we've encountered started somewhere. Today's laughable chemical propellant wielders are tomorrow's potential adversaries. Besides, this footage will give the cadets a much-needed confidence boost. Nothing builds military morale like mockery of lesser technologies. Within hours, the Academy's viewing theater was being prepared. Normally reserved for strategic simulations and the occasional morale-building comedy night, typically featuring recordings of rival military forces' embarrassing defeats, the theater would now host what Zorn had boldly titled Humans, When Evolution Takes the Scenic Route. Technicians adjusted the neural immersion settings to ensure the cadets would experience not just visual and auditory information, but also contextual emotional data. After all, truly understanding an enemy meant understanding their motivations, even if those motivations seemed as logical as using a quantum disruptor to butter toast. Make sure we progress chronologically, Zorn instructed the nervous technician. Start with their most primitive conflicts and move forward. I want the cadets to see the painfully slow progression of human warfare. It'll be educational and hilarious, the best combination since we paired targeting systems with sarcastic artificial intelligence. With everything prepared, Zorn sent out a mandatory attendance notice to all first-year cadets. That attendance was technically optional, in the same way that breathing was technically optional if you didn't mind the consequences. The Academy's viewing theater filled with cadets in various states of enthusiasm, ranging from genuine interest to I'm only here because the alternative is latrine duty on the methane moons. The seating accommodated all manner of biological configurations, hovering platforms for the gaseous entities, liquid-filled tanks for the aquatics, and standard anti-gravity cushions for everyone else. Trill, Gronk, Pixnar, and Morp had secured front row seats, largely because Trill's natural heat radiation created a comfortable exclusion zone around her. Cadets were munching on an assortment of species-appropriate snacks, crystallized nutrient clusters, photosynthesis-enhancing light sticks, and for the more adventurous, synthesized flavor bombs that randomly changed taste every 11 seconds. "I heard it's about some backwater species that still uses physical projectiles," Gronk whispered, all 6 hands occupied with different snacks. "Should be good for a laugh," Trill agreed, her body temperature spiking with anticipation and melting a small portion of her armrest. Commander Zorn strode to the center of the stage, his uniform impossibly crisp, as if the fabric was too intimidated to wrinkle. "Cadets, today's presentation falls under Know Your Enemy training. You will observe the military evolution of a species called humans. Their planet, Earth, is so insignificant that we didn't bother giving it a proper designation in our star charts. And currently, they pose no threat to the Confederation, but understanding primitive warfare helps appreciate how far superior our methods are. Neural immersion will begin at historical point 0. Try not to laugh too loudly, it disrupts the immersion field." The lights dimmed, and the immersion field activated. Suddenly the cadets weren't in a theater, but standing on the edges of an ancient battlefield. The humans in crude armor faced each other with sharpened metal on sticks. "This is their medieval period," Zorn's voice narrated. "Note the complete lack of energy weapons, shield technology, or basic medical sanitation." The initial battles elicited the expected reaction: chuckles, snorts, and the specific sound Betelgeusians make when they're feeling smugly superior, something like a tea kettle trying to hiccup. Their primary tactics appear to involve running directly at each other, observed Pixnar, who had fully awakened now. Extremely inefficient use of biomass. The presentation continued through human history, the development of projectile weapons, early artillery, increasingly organized military units. Some cadets took notes, most just enjoyed the spectacle of such primitive warfare. The mood was light, educational, exactly as Zorn had planned. Then came the 20th century. The immersion field shifted to a landscape of mud and trenches. The sound of constant artillery bombardment filled the theater. The neural link transmitted contextual emotions: fear, desperation, determination. The cadets shifted uncomfortably. "What is this?" Morp bubbled anxiously, their amorphous form rippling with distress. "World War I," Zorn narrated clinically, "the first globally mechanized conflict on Earth. Note the introduction of chemical warfare, machine guns, and aerial bombardment." Before the cadets could fully process this escalation, the immersion jumped forward to World War I. Tanks rolled across landscapes. Cities burned under aerial bombing campaigns. The systematic efficiency of the destruction was unsettling. Gronk lowered several of his snacks. "They're still using chemical propellants here. But the scale, the organization, the Vietnam War, Desert Storm, urban warfare tactics, increasing precision, decreasing time between technological leaps." Trill's temperature had dropped below normal, a sign of extreme distress in Mercurians. "Commander, I think we should." "Pay attention, cadet," Zorn snapped. "Note how they adapt their primitive technology to compensate for limitations. Quite resourceful for primitives." The final sequences showed modern special forces operations. Small teams accomplishing objectives with terrifying efficiency. Drones, precision strikes, cyber warfare complementing physical attacks. The neural link transmitted not just the technical aspects but the human ingenuity behind them, the relentless drive to find new ways to gain advantage, the creativity applied to the problem of combat. When the lights came up, the theater was dead silent. Several cadets appeared physically ill. Gronk had dropped all his snacks. Pixnar's 3 hearts were beating so erratically that the medical monitoring system had activated. Morp had lost cohesion and was slowly dripping between the seat cushions. Zorn looked around, confused by the reaction. This was supposed to be educational with a side of smug superiority, not whatever this was. "Questions?" he asked, with all the sensitivity of a neutron star. A Regulan cadet raised a trembling limb. Sir, if they've advanced this much using just chemical propellants and physical principles, what would they do with actual advanced technology? Another voice from the back. They went from swords to precision-guided munitions in less than 2,000 planetary cycles. That's not normal. Zorn opened his mouth to dismiss these concerns, then closed it again. For the first time in his career, Commander Vrexel Zorn was at a loss for words. The Academy's administrative chamber had never seen such chaos. Technically, it had seen 6 invasions, 2 coup attempts, and that time when someone brought an unquarantined Regalian mood slime to the annual staff party. But this was a different category of disorder entirely. 17 resignation requests in one day. Academy Director Foz slammed a tentacle on the table, sending data pads flying. As a member of the ancient cephalopod collective, Foz had evolved beyond the need for indoor voice modulation. 17. All citing existential reconsideration and philosophical incompatibility with military service. What in the 7 nebulas happened in that viewing theater? Zorn. Commander Zorn stood at rigid attention, a posture he maintained even during sleep cycles. Director, I simply showed the cadets the military evolution of a primitive species. It was meant to be educational. Educational? Half my cadets are requesting psychological evaluation. 3 quantum physics instructors found Cadet Morp hiding in the particle accelerator, refusing to resolidify. The Arcturian twins have applied for transfer to the Diplomatic Corps, Zorn. Do you know how embarrassing it is to lose cadets to those smug tentacle claspers? Senior researcher Drex, unfortunately present for this dressing down, couldn't help but interject. Fascinating behavioral response. Perhaps the neural immersion settings were too high? Human warfare does have an unusual emotional component that. Shut it, Drex. Both Zorn and Foz shouted in unison. Meanwhile, in the cadet common area, the fallout continued. Trill had formed a discussion circle that more resembled a therapy session. Did you see how quickly they adapted their tactics? She asked. Her natural glow dimmed to a concerned ember. One minute they're learning that trenches don't work. The next they're developing entirely new forms of mobile warfare. Gronk nodded, several heads in agreement. Their technological limitation forced creativity. They can't rely on shield generators or gravity weapons, so they just think harder about killing each other. It's not just the weapons, Pixnar added, his 3 hearts finally beating in a less alarming pattern. It's their willingness to use them. Did you notice how they kept fighting despite catastrophic casualties? The neural link suggested they were experiencing extreme fear, and yet they kept advancing. A quiet voice spoke from a corner table, where a solitary cadet sat surrounded by data pads. It was Flurx, a dendrobian known for excessive studiousness and an unsettling interest in historical atrocities. They're fascinating, Flurx said, compound eyes reflecting the glow of the screens showing replays of human combat footage. Their entire evolutionary path selected for persistence hunting. They don't outrun prey they follow until it collapses from exhaustion. They applied the same principle to warfare. The other cadets stared at Flurx with growing unease. That's deeply disturbing, Morp bubbled, having partially resolidified but still looking a bit runny around the edges. It's brilliant, Flurx corrected, mandibles clicking with excitement. I've been researching more of their history. These humans developed most of their military technology while fighting other humans. Imagine what they'd create if they faced an external threat. I've started modeling potential human responses to various Confederation standard tactics, and the preliminary results are concerning. Back in the administrative chamber, the crisis continued to unfold. Academic Overseer Vrel had joined the meeting, adding another tentacle-wielding voice to the chorus of distress. The educational impact is spreading beyond military training, Vrel reported, adjusting her ceremonial academic hood. Cadets are questioning fundamental Confederation doctrine about technological superiority determining military outcomes. Some are suggesting we should incorporate more tactical flexibility into the curriculum. Director Foz gasped dramatically. Tactical flexibility? Next, they'll want to question orders. What exactly about these humans triggered such a response? Vrel demanded, fixing all four eye stalks on Zorn. Commander Zorn struggled to articulate what he himself had begun to realize. The humans, they don't fight like we expect primitives to fight. They're relentless. Adaptive. They turn limitations into advantages. And the neural immersion captured something else. They seem to enjoy the challenge. There's a satisfaction they take in overcoming military obstacles that our cadets found disturbing and inspiring, Drex added unhelpfully. Don't forget that Cadet Flurx has submitted 7 requests for additional human military data. 7. That's excessive even by research standards. Director Foz slowly deflated all breathing sacs, a sign of deep contemplation in their species. This situation requires careful management. The last thing we need is for the General Command to hear that a single viewing of primitive warfare techniques has destabilized an entire class of Cadassi. Too late. The door slid open, revealing the imposing figure of General Kraz, Supreme Commander of all Academy operations and rumored to have once defeated an entire rebel fleet by simply sending them his personal performance reviews of their attack strategies. I believe, General Kraz rumbled, voice like gravel in a quantum blender, we have a situation that requires testing. The simulation chamber was the Academy's pride and joy, a massive space where reality itself could be manipulated to create any battle scenario imaginable. Cutting-edge quantum processors modeled every variable, from weapon effects to psychological responses. It was primarily used for final examinations, not impromptu evaluations of cadet mental stability. Yet here they were. This is a simple exercise, General Kraz announced to the assembled cadets and staff. We've programmed a simulation based on human military doctrine as observed through their historical records. 1 squad of our best senior cadets will engage using Confederation standard tactics. The objective is neutralization of the opposing force. Success will demonstrate the superiority of our methods and restore proper perspective. The selected squad, led by the Academy's top-ranked senior cadet approximan named Vex with a perfect record in tactical simulations, looked confident as they checked their simulated equipment. This should be enlightening, Vex remarked, adjusting her neural interface. I've studied the human footage. Their tactics are creative but limited by technology. We have superior weapons, training, and cohesion. Commander Zorn, standing at the observation platform with the other staff members, felt an unfamiliar sensation in his gut. Humans might call it foreboding. Zorn called it tactical anticipation. Begin simulation, General Kraz ordered. The chamber transformed into an urban environment, buildings, streets, varied terrain. Vex's squad moved with practiced precision, establishing strategic positions and sensor coverage. Everything by the book. The simulated human force was invisible at first, no energy signatures, no movement detected. Then it began. The first cadet went down without warning, a simple projectile from extreme range. Before the squad could respond, 2 more were neutralized by explosives that had been planted before the simulation even began. Impossible, Vex hissed. They couldn't have anticipated our entry point. They didn't, the Academy's AI announced dispassionately. The simulation indicates they prepared all potential entry points equally. Vex regrouped her remaining cadets, implementing Confederation Counter-Ambush Protocol 7. They moved to higher ground, established a defensive perimeter, and deployed sensor drones. The drones went dark simultaneously. Electromagnetic pulse, a technician reported. Primitive but effective. What followed was a systematic dismantling of everything the cadets had been taught. The simulated humans didn't fight according to any recognizable doctrine. They used the environment, improvised weapons, and most disturbingly, appeared to adapt their tactics in real time based on cadet responses. Within 17 minutes, Vex's entire squad had been neutralized. The simulation ended, leaving shocked silence in its wake. Run it again, General Kraz ordered. Multiple eyes narrowed to slits. Different cadets, different scenario. They ran it 5 more times. Woodland terrain, desert. Arctic conditions, space-based operations, urban underground. The scenarios changed, but the results didn't. The cadets, even with their advanced technology, kept losing. After the final simulation, Vex approached the command platform, her usual confidence shattered. "They fight wrong," she said simply. "Every time we adapted, they changed their approach. They used our technology against us. When we established patterns, they exploited them. It was like they were enjoying the challenge." Commander Zorn felt all four of his eyes twitch simultaneously. That's exactly what the neural link showed. They perceive warfare as a problem to be solved rather than a protocol to be followed. General Kraz turned slowly to Director Foz, voice dangerously calm. "You're telling me that a species still using chemical propellants has combat doctrine that consistently defeats our best cadets?" "The simulations are theoretical," Drex interjected nervously, "based on observed behaviors rather than direct engagement data." "And that's supposed to be comforting," General Kraz bellowed. "Our military doctrine is based on technological superiority. What happens when a species that thinks like this gets access to our level of technology?" In the observation area, the remaining first-year cadets watched with mixed reactions. Half looked terrified at the implications. The other half, notably including Flerex, were watching with something closer to fascination. "Their approach is completely different from what we're taught," Flerex murmured, compound eyes reflecting the replay of the simulations. "They don't just apply force, they solve the puzzle of each battle. It's beautiful. In a terrifying way." Warp, who had finally achieved complete resolidification, rippled anxiously. "You find this beautiful?" "They're horrifying." "They're survivors," Flerex corrected. "Think about it, they evolved on a death world with countless apex predators, extreme climate variations, and regular natural disasters. Their entire history is overcoming odds through adaptation and sheer stubborn persistence." Trill nodded slowly, her glow brightening with realization. "So either we learn from them, or we stay very, very far away from them," Gronk finished. The Great Hall of the Galactic Military Academy had witnessed many historic moments: graduation ceremonies, declarations of war. At time, the Antarian ambassador accidentally released hallucinogenic spores during a peace conference. Today, it hosted something entirely new, a curriculum revision emergency session. Director Foz presided from the central podium, surrounded by Academy leadership. The remaining cadets, approximately half the original class, sat in disciplined rows. The other half had either resigned, transferred to non-combat divisions, or in the case of three particularly sensitive Aldebaranians, had taken vows of pacifism and opened a meditation retreat in the Outer Rim. After thorough review, Foz announced, voice modulated to project authoritative calm, "The Academy is implementing immediate changes to our training protocols. Senior researcher Drex will explain the new approach." Drex surged forward, tentacles waving with barely contained excitement. "Fascinating developments. We've created an entirely new required course, adaptation-focused combat theory, lessons from primitive ingenuity. Or as we've been informally calling it, how to think like a human without scaring yourself." Commander Zorn stepped forward, looking somewhat less rigid than usual, the military equivalent of a complete personality transformation. "Additionally, I have formally submitted recommendation GA 7729X to the Confederation Security Council, classifying planet Earth and its surrounding space as a restricted non-engagement zone with the designation approach with extreme caution." General Kraz nodded gravely. "The recommendation has been approved with unprecedented speed. We've also allocated significant resources to monitoring human development without interference. Current projections suggest they may achieve faster than light travel within the next century. The Confederation needs to be prepared." The word prepared hung in the air like a poorly disposed of biological hazard. Cadet Flerex raised a limb. "Sir, what exactly are we preparing for? Humans don't appear to be expansionist by nature. Their conflicts are primarily internal." "For now," General Kraz emphasized, "but species behaviors change once they move beyond their home systems. We're preparing for any possibility, including diplomatic engagement when the time comes." Trill's temperature elevated slightly with hope. So we're not considering them enemies. We're considering them a fascinating case study in evolution taking a different path to similar outcomes, Director Foz said diplomatically. And perhaps potential allies someday, if approached correctly. In the months that followed, the Academy transformed. Combat simulations now included scenarios where technological advantages were neutralized, forcing cadets to develop adaptability. Tactical flexibility became as important as firepower. The histories of various species' military development were studied comparatively rather than hierarchically. The graduation ceremony that year was smaller than usual but noteworthy for producing what military historians would later call the adaptive generation officers who would go on to revolutionize Confederation military doctrine. Commander Zorn, standing at the back of the ceremony hall, watched with a complex mixture of emotions as his cadets received their commissions. "Quite the turnaround," Drex commented, materializing beside him with typical researcher disregard for personal space, and from nearly destroying cadet morale to pioneering a revolutionary training approach. The statistical probability of such a positive outcome from an initial disaster was approximately. "Save the numbers, Drex," Zorn interrupted. "Sometimes the best lessons come from the worst experiences." "Indeed. Speaking of which, have you seen the new Academy recruitment materials? Enrollment applications have increased by 23% since we added the tagline." Zorn winced. The new recruitment hologram ended with what had begun as a joke, but had somehow been approved by Academy marketing, but an image of the Academy crest with the words "The Galactic Military Academy, training you to survive in a universe where humans exist." As the ceremony concluded, Cadet now Officer Flurix approached her former instructors. "I've been assigned to the observation post in the Sol System's outer boundary," she announced, mandibles clicking with poorly concealed excitement. "We'll be monitoring human communications and development from a safe distance." "Remember the non-interference directive," Zorn cautioned. "The last thing we need is humans becoming aware of the wider galactic community before they're ready, or before we're ready for them." Flurix nodded seriously. "Of course, Commander. Though based on their entertainment broadcasts, they already assume the galaxy is full of life. They've imagined countless scenarios of first contact, most ending with them either befriending or defeating whatever they encounter." "Let's hope reality follows their more optimistic fiction," Drex burbled. "I've analyzed their broadcast narratives. They seem equally capable of extraordinary compassion and terrifying determination." As the Academy settled into its new normal, one thing became abundantly clear. The universe had suddenly become a more complicated place, not because they had discovered humans, but because humans had made them rediscover something about themselves. Complacency was the true enemy, and adaptation the greatest strength. In the Academy's secure archives, a new data crystal took its place among the historical records. Its label read simply Earth, the day everything changed, and below that, in smaller text, "Approach with caution, they're just getting started." Meanwhile, on a small blue planet in an unremarkable spiral arm, humanity continued its march toward the stars, blissfully unaware that half a galaxy away, but an entire class of alien cadets had taken one look at their military history and decided that perhaps a career change was in order.